What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. Massive experimental card just went live. Molly, the Overwatch community manager, went to the forums to explain their intentions with this, saying with this experiment, they're testing some hero adjustments aimed at shifting away from a barrier-heavy meta, as well as use this as an opportunity to address some underperforming heroes. Finishing in saying that game development is an iterative process, especially hero balance, and they'll be looking to read your feedback. And well, I know many of you are going to have strong feelings about a lot of these changes, because as she says in this post explicitly, these are changes aimed at Overwatch's highest levels of play, which makes a lot of players uncomfortable because some of these changes are very heavy-handed. This first one to Brigitte is quite large, where her base overall health now goes down to 200 total. Remember, she still has the 50 armor. She used to have 250 total. Now it'll just be 200. And Inspire gets a pretty heavy nerf, where its overall healing, once you activated it, could do 130 over a 6-second duration. Now it will only do 90. However, they do compensate for this by removing the self-heal penalty she used to have. So actually, you're going to be receiving more self-healing than before. It was about 10 or almost 11 per second before. Now you'll get 15, just like the rest of your teammates, which helps soften the blow of this nerf a little bit. But with less health for herself, she'll be a bit harder to play, but keep in mind 250 of shield health still makes her the most tanky support by far. But where you'll really notice this is when you're trying to focus a target that isn't Brigitte, receiving both Repair Pack and Inspire. Those numbers are just lower now. And I'm sure you will feel it with certain breakpoints where targets used to survive just enough to continue to be healed, and now they'll probably fall. The other major place you'll notice this for sure is her charge rate on Rally, which had to become easily the best support ult in the game to me. We'll have to monitor how that lands in the pecking order of ultimates. Is it as slow as, say, Sound Barrier now, which is incredibly slow? We'll have to find out. The next change was to Orisa, who gets a flat health nerf, or perhaps safer to say a revert, taking away that 50 extra armor health they gave her when they nerfed her shield way back when in the Breakable Barriers patch. But between Batiste lamps and Fortify, or a Sigma by her side to help protect her, I don't think you're going to notice that nerf as much as this massive nerf to Halt. The radius has now been reduced from 7 meters to 4, which in the training range, each of these lines indicate 10 meters of distance, so you can use that to judge. It used to be able to pull you from 3/4 of that distance away, further than a Graviton Surge. It had a massive AoE. Now at 4 meters, well, you got to put it basically right on a thing in order for it to have a chance of hitting what you're aiming at. In fact, in testing, between this reduced range as well as the second change, which is a buff and a bit of a nerf at the same time, it now moves way faster with a heightened projectile speed at 30. So at medium range, this is going to be harder to react to due to its speed, but because the cone of it is so much smaller, I think it's going to be a lot harder to place it in very guaranteed locations. Whereas the old version was slow with a massive AoE, it pretty easily could be placed over the top of an entire team formation. And how slow it moved actually kind of helped get everybody ready to follow up on it, as well as activate it at its ideal location. Whereas it moving faster, well, those windows of time for you to figure out the optimal time to pop it are going to be more punishing now. So it's way more of a skill shot, both in timing, also obviously just in it's harder to hit in general, easier to get away from. 4 meters, I mean, a ton of abilities can get you 4 meters out of dodge, even if it does move faster at you. Pushing an escape button, which so many characters have, to move out of the way. If they have a cooldown to move, safe to say I think they're going to get away from it, if they can see it coming. The next change up was to Pharah, who has been struggling due to a combination of so many viable hit scans, but also tanks that can shoot up or have enough buttons to interact with everything she does. So she's receiving buffs. Movement speed of hover jets has been increased by 20%, which is going to make her a lot harder to hit midair, but also just get her more distance while moving. And they say here the regeneration rate has been reduced to 35, but I believe when you account for the fact that she moves faster, in testing, I think you're going to be able to hover the same amount as before. As in, as long as you manage it properly, you'll still be able to stay in the skybox, if I'm not mistaken. You'll lose the resource faster, but you get farther with the same amount of resource. So I think that mostly washes out, but we'll have to monitor that. Another change was to her barrage, where it gets a nerf kind of, because, well, the duration of it is just flat out reduced to 2.5 seconds, which means you won't be able to get that extra bit of damage out of it. But let's think about it. Did Pharah need that extra damage to confirm the eliminations she was going to get when she presses Q? Not really. Instead, just being able to escape out of the animation faster is kind of a bigger and more important buff. It's been floated recently that maybe she would even need to be able to cancel Barrage, since everything else seems to be able to cancel its abilities nowadays. So Blizzard didn't go that far this time, but this buff is similar to that idea in concept. I don't think you're ever going to need that extra damage. Instead, you might actually be able to live through a barrage now that your team only has to scramble to protect you for 2.5 seconds instead of 3. Next change is a huge buff to Roadhog. Now you'll notice that the recovery rate or fire rate of his weapon has gone down fairly significantly. It's going to be a lot more sluggish as well. There's less ammo for his weapon's capacity, only 5 total shots before you have to reload, but this damage buff is enormous. Each shot of Roadhog's buckshot, either his primary or secondary fire, had 25 pellets. So that means the damage per shot can go up by 25. It used to max out at 150. Now it'll max out at 175. And keep in mind, it can headshot. But now you won't need to land any headshots in order to be able to shoot melee to confirm a kill on a target. Really big buff, especially when you combine with landing a hook, which does damage itself. This will mean Roadhog will get far more reliable one-shot kills, put down an increased amount of shield pressure, as well as just more mid-fight damage, building faster ults, winning duels, I would say, against thicker characters even better than before. Look out, Reinhardt and Winston, who luckily have some armor health to withstand some of this damage, but he's going to be scary up against them. He might actually counter Doomfist now rather than be a punching bag for him, and other thick characters like Mei and Reaper may also be afraid of the big pig moving forward. If I had to pick one patch note that's going to have the biggest implications for ranked, it would have to be this Roadhog change, because he's a character that's popular to be picked anyway, because he has a selfish playstyle that you don't need to coordinate too much to get to work, but didn't add much to the team. Well, now he's got the damage in order to justify that pick, I think, a lot of the time, especially when you combine with the nerfs to the other tanks that are good at dealing damage, most notably Sigma, who still is going to retain all his damage output. Still incredible in that regard, but just a straight up barrier nerf here, reducing its health from 900 to 700 and reduced its regeneration rate. So when you combine shield nerf to a shield breaking character buff with Roadhog, this power shift is going to be quite big, I think. And on top of that, Sigma's kinetic grasp cooldown has been increased from 10 to 12 seconds as well, making it a lot more punishing and harder to spam, though it's retaining its buffs that it got in the Great Barrier rework, so it still can farm you up to 800 health. It's an incredibly strong ability. And I think the secret about Sigma's strength at higher tiers is that, well, players have just gotten so good at this character, especially with min-maxing his shields perfectly, as well as because he's a skill shot character. Yes, maybe he can be dove, singled out, punched by Doomfist, things like that. If he doesn't miss, he can outplay some of those natural counters. So Blizzard has gone and just straight up reduced his power level in order for other things to compete with him. But despite how high I am on the Roadhog changes, Sigma's just overall a great ranked character. He can do everything. So despite these nerfs, I think he loses the least out of the characters that are being changed, because his normal kit already was quite similar to Roadhog. He just also did other cool defensive interactions, so he's not really losing that flexibility. It's just a bit weaker now. Next change is the Symmetra. This change I actually think is a bit redonkulous. Her primary fire now takes 4 full seconds before it loses full charge, okay? 4 seconds. That means you can gain up to full charge off a shield or a tank or whatever, get up to max 3 charge where you melt things instantly, and not feel that you have to be so close to the engagement in order to keep that charge. Symmetra is a very glass cannon type character, and because of that, working her way up to that higher charge level was always a risk. And now, well, you're gonna be at max charge a lot longer, possibly through the entire fight, pretty easily. Now, keep in mind that the context of the rest of these changes is that the characters that kind of slowed down the game to make it more poke heavy with Orisa, Sigma, and Brig have been nerfed, so more fighting will happen without the safety of those abilities slowing the game down. So there's a chance that this incredible overbuff doesn't matter too much because, like, well, if Roadhog just comes in and kills a thing instantly, you're not having these prolonged fights where Sim is melting a shield and burning it down, keeping tier 3 charged. The game might be too lethal for that to matter too much. Because keep in mind as well, Symmetra benefits from the slower playstyle when both teams have shields and both are jockeying for that defensive playstyle. Well, then the fact that she has infinite ammo on shields and works her way up to tier 3 matters more in the damage exchange. But when those sustain elements drop in value, she might need this buff in order to compete. So I'm of two minds with it. It looks redonkulous on paper, but it might be required for her to maintain the power level she's at now. Other change, the teleporter cooldown has been reduced to 10 seconds. I don't think too significant, though it might help you make some escapes or do cheeky plays more frequently, but it's still fairly long to be quite punishable. Last buff, sniping Zenyatta is back. I think it was a year or two ago where Zenyatta's ult fire was just a remarkable way to get snipe pickoffs. Well, now a lot of that power has come back, albeit in a different way, but the charge rate on it goes up by 15%. Now, keep in mind, this is how long it takes for Zenyatta to prepare the orbs, and there is actually extra time that you have to maintain it before you have to let it go, meaning that if you're not paying attention, you might not make use of this buff. If you look at Zenyatta's ammo counter, wait for him to ready the 5 orbs, and then you can fire, though you don't have to. You can hold it a bit longer if you want. That's what's being changed here. You can release it faster than before as the orbs ready more quickly. But on top of that, the rate of fire when you release it also gets increased, going from 8.5 to 9 shots per second. That number doesn't mean anything to me, but at range, I think you really start to notice this. The higher the rate of fire on this, the more gathered together the projectiles are. So when you load up your shotgun blast of Zenyatta Orb of Destruction, not only can you release it faster, but when you do release it, there's less delay for those last few balls in the volley to land with the rest of them, right? They all come in one big clump more than before, making them easier to hit, which again is more important at longer ranges. If you were tracking a moving target that was moving very fast and there was a bigger delay between each shot with the fire rate lower, well, then you needed to lead it more in order to maintain the tracking and follow up on that, where if it comes out faster, well, more miraculous shots can be hit, and these are harder to dodge. It's hard to know where this will land Zen in the pecking order, but it definitely returns this aspect of his kit to former glory, though a lot of other things have increased in power since then. So I'm gonna have to absorb all these changes in total to really know where any of these individual characters fall. I would say that these changes are fairly heavy-handed in that they'll definitely shake up the meta, but it's something that we'll have to continue to discuss in future videos. But that's gonna be it for this one. However, I have a huge announcement for you guys. This weekend is the Overwatch League Countdown Cup, and the Overwatch League reached out to us to do a sponsored co-stream with them. So around 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Saturday, we're gonna be doing a live pro analysis of the Paris Eternal, who were the winners of the previous Summer Showdown tournament. And you can come in to check us out live. Eddie is gonna be making a return on the channel, as well as myself will be on Facecam, breaking down the current pro meta as well as the play as it's happening live. We'll be streaming right on YouTube, just like the Overwatch League. And if that at all interests you, be sure to set a reminder to get a notification when that stream goes live. The times will be flexible based on how the earlier matches go schedule-wise. Right after we make this video live, I'm going to schedule the live stream, so set a reminder for that so you don't miss out. Otherwise, that's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys Saturday. Come check us out live.